Welcome to Pizzo's Perfection, where perfection is never perfect. This is part 2 of Editor or Not. We're going to discuss my decision to go with a freelance editor, to actually invest in a freelance editor in my writing process, in my writing journey, and ways in which you can determine whether you want to invest in an editor or not, and also get to hear this really juicy letter from an editor about my book. So I'm going to start with that. Let's start with the juicy, or maybe I'll weave it in throughout. Okay, I'll weave it in throughout. Conferences. I talked about investing in your craft as a writer. Watch that video. It's a good video. 5 ways you can invest. Go back and see that. But I talked about that, and one of the things I mentioned was conferences. And at a conference, you could typically submit some of your work, or you can sit in front of an agent or an editor, and they will review a page or 2 of your work and provide you with feedback. Warning here, caveat emptor, buyer beware. It is not a time to be discovered. You are not going to be discovered. They may say, hey, send me your work. They say that to everybody. It's not a time for that. Just go to learn. Go to learn. But I did that very thing at the Quele conference that I loved. It was fabulous. I'll try to do a video all about Quele in New York, in Brooklyn, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because I got to visit my oldest girl there. And it was a great conference, but I had submitted my work, paid for it to be reviewed. You paying for everything. Paying for everything. It's an investment in you, pay for it to be reviewed. And then afterwards, when I got there, the person wasn't there. My name wasn't on the list, and I didn't know what was going on. I had to go and find them and say, well, what's happening? They said, oh, they had an emergency. They won't be able to review it, but we did send it for Victoria Sanders Agency. Just gonna put it out there, Victoria Sanders Agency, which I love because they sponsored Quele conference. Victoria Sanders Agency, and they'll get back with you. They'll review it and get back with you, send you a letter of about your writing. That was great. I needed to hear that, and they did. They were very timely and sent me a whole page and a little bit on the top editorial letter about my YA manuscript, Wisdom House Dance Club. Okay. So I'll just read a paragraph and then go into editor or not. So you'll get a little back and forth. Editor or not, a little bit of the editor's letter. Editor or not, a little bit of editor's note. All right. Dear Robin, I am writing on behalf of Victoria Sanders and all of us here at VSA. Thank you so much for sending Wisdom House Dance Club for our review. There is so much to admire here in this young adult novel. You have a singular voice and a wonderful gift for storytelling. There is such potential for a powerful and compelling story about life and death. Our Western culture so often avoids the topics of aging and death, and this is a wonderful opportunity to bring these important issues into the light for a teenage audience. I loved all of that. But remember, I've been in this a long time. I know the whole hamburger thing. Good. Issues end with good. I know how they do that, but I still loved it. It spoke right to what the book is about. So I felt like, yeah, they got that. They got it. That was clarity for me. That was good that it was clear enough for them to get it. We believe that Wisdom House Dance Club is just brimming with promise. Woohoo! Brimming with promise. I like that now. I like that. I might have to make that bold in my office when I get an office. And brimming with promise. I like that. All right, so that was the first paragraph. So I felt good. And let me tell you this. This is not for the faint at heart. Working with editors, critique partners, beta reader prepares you to work with the editor. So if you haven't done a lot of that, you may not be strong enough just naturally to work with an editor because they don't love you. They're not your kids, your husband, your mama, your sister, your brother who, oh girl, I like it. I like it. You got to go through that stage. I went through that stage the first couple of years. I went through just having people who love me tell me they love me and keep going. So you got to go through those stages. But I'm at the place where I can take some deep cuts. Cut me so I can grow. Prune me so I can flourish even more, is where I'm at in my writing. And so that was great. I loved it. Lots of pieces I feel like I could take out and put up on the wall to help me continue to move forward, to validate me and my work, to encourage me. I love that. So, editor or not, should you invest in an editor or not? Editor. You should get an editor if you've completed several revisions and had several beta readers and critique partners review your work, review your manuscript. You should. And you're at a place of now what? What do I do now? Yes, I wrote it down. Y'all know I got my little handy dandy notebook. When you've gotten to that place, you've had your mama and all of them read it and talk about it. And you had a group, and these are people you can trust. And then you had a group of critique partners, people who write too, who understand writing, that whole thing. And then you've had some beta readers, people who will deep dive, look behind your eyes as a reader. All of that. You've gone through those levels and stages. And you're really saying, now what? How do I go? How do I grow even more? What do I do now? Maybe this is time for you to say, yes, I want to get an editor. That's kind of where I was at. I want to get an editor. Okay. You are not probably ready for an editor if you barely have an idea of who you are as a writer, what you want to write, or a book. Okay. Or a novel or manuscript, any of that. You barely have an idea. You barely read in that particular genre. I mean, I have read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children's literature. I taught it. And so it was always on my bookshelves. It's a part of what I do and who I am, even to this day. I don't go a day or two without reading a new kid book. So you gotta immerse yourself in whatever you want to write, even if it's that personal, inspirational story about yourself, about your testimony. How many other folks' testimonies have you read through? How many other autobiographies have you reviewed, read? Really getting behind the genre, the area, the themes that you want to write, and really diving deep into exploring those from other writers is really important. You are not ready if you have barely had an idea, barely read in that particular genre, barely researched that style, concept, or type of book. And I will put this here, caveat emptor, buyer beware. If you are writing of another culture, I heard this quote from Jacqueline Woodson, and I believe it to be true. You can write. I am a person who believes you can write anything. I don't believe in banned books. Write it all. Just write it all. And let the people sift it out. Let me decide if that's something I want to read or explore or engage in, okay? But just know, if you're going to write outside of your experiences, it's difficult to write about a people or a situation if you haven't done your homework, and difficult to write about a people outside of your culture if you've never sat and had a meal with those people. Okay, not that you work with Sister Girl, or that you seen them on a trip at the museum, or you read a bunch of books about them, but have you ever had someone of that culture sitting at your table where you all fellowship together? Think about that before you decide, I'm going to write a whole whatever that's going to highlight people of this nationality, culture, experience. Just something to think about. All right, so if you haven't done any of those things, don't get an editor. You're not quite ready. You're not ready. Maybe a book coach, maybe somebody who could pull some of that stuff out, but you're not ready to invest. It would not be a good investment for your money to hire an editor. And don't let an editor tell you it would be. It would not be. From a teacher, it would not be. All right, let's read another paragraph of the letter. However, despite all of the wonderful aspects, there's always a but, however, despite all of the wonderful aspects of this manuscript that we were immediately drawn to, we do have a few concerns. Yes. Initially, we were struck by some awkward syntax. You know what? I have been hearing awkward syntax since I was in like grade school. It's amazing to me. It's a academic reference that drives me nuts. But I could probably show you some stuff from when I was in high school that says awkward syntax, whatever. And phrasing to be found in your writing, in both your letter and your 10-page sample. Okay, the letter, there are some references to the letter, but honestly, when I sent the manuscript, they called me and said, we got your payment and your manuscript, but we didn't get the letter. And I sent the letter, the original letter. I have no clue what happened to it. So they said, we need a letter in like an hour to get this to the original person who was going to read it. And I was scrambling and I was like, oh my God. So I don't know what went in that letter, because I was just trying to get them something at that point. So there is some references about the letter, but I'm not concerned about the letter at all. For instance, this sentence is a bit difficult to follow, for since she began raises the question of whether she's a good employee or not for Wisdom House Senior Facility owned by her mother. Like that was in the letter, it's nowhere in my manuscript. So I understand that. Being sure to really take the time to finesse all of the language and writing so that everything has a natural flow and cadence, and so that the meaning doesn't get lost in your word choice or syntax. Okay, that's really important. Be sure to really take the time to finesse all of the language and writing so that everything has a natural flow and cadence, and so that the meaning doesn't get lost in your word choice or syntax. Actual letter from an editor. Okay, at an agency. Actual letter. All right, so should you invest in an editor or not? Editor, you want to learn and grow and develop more as a writer. That's where I'm at. It's all about that, continuing to grow and develop. You want honest feedback, not, I love you, you my sister, you my mother, you my brother, you my cousin, you my friend, you my homegirl feedback. Because no matter how honest they may be brutally, if you have a relationship with them in some way, it's going to trickle into how they review and talk about your work. It just is. It just is. Every time I read to my mama, she like, oh, that's so good. You know, it's just, and if you got a tough sister girl who never gives compliments, she gonna be tough to make sure that persona, that image continues on. Girl, you need to work on that. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're gonna get all of that. So if you want someone that is completely outside of your circle, okay, and you want to grow, you want to develop more as a writer, not to be discovered, but to develop more as a writer, you might be ready for an editor. You might be ready for an editor. You are not ready for an editor if you want to be puffed up, if you want to be affirmed. Remember that, however, if you want to be encouraged and with an A++, I give this an A++. This is so good. This is fabulous review of your writing. If you still are in that stage, which that is fine. I went through that stage. There are days I'm in that stage right now where I just need somebody to be like, oh, that's so good. Because that keeps you going, keeps you encouraged. If you are still only in that stage, though, don't invest in an editor. Don't spend your money on an editor. Don't go there. Just continue to grow and develop at your pace, at your timing, and you will get there. You will get there where you're like, okay, cut all of the jibber jabber with the strawberries and champagne. Let's get to the nitty gritty of how I can make this better. Okay? So, if you only want to get puffed up, you want somebody to be like, girl, this is the bomb.com. This is so good. You got it. Pulitzer Prize winner, National Book Award, Coretta Scott King, all of that good stuff in one of your drafts. Don't invest yet. Don't invest yet. Okay, I'm trying to speak some truth here to help you. Okay, another paragraph. Also, be sure to attend to all the small details. Keep your eyes out for typos and inconsistencies. That's what life is like for a writer in the fringes, me. I have so many typos and inconsistencies. It drives me crazy. For instance, the protagonist's name is Azaria and it's spelled a certain way in your letter, but Azaria in the sample is different. It is important that the copy is clean of such mistakes and typos before it is sent out to the editors. And I do think that becomes a little flexible once you actually have a deal and that's your editor. I think they're able to catch all of that and they know that that's part of their process. And be sure to anchor the story in time and place. That is one thing. I grew up in my English literature college degree era loving the beatniks. They wrote a stream of consciousness and you just had to go along with them. And I can pick up that a lot in my writing and I try to tame it and temper it. But when you do that, you do lose your reader in time and place and location, and you got to anchor your readers. And so that's always a great thing. I could put that on the wall just as a remembrance, something for me to remember. It is difficult to decipher where and when this story takes place exactly, so be sure that there are context clues that make all of this clear. That's one of the things, and that was the second rewrite of that manuscript that they read, and I struggled with that at the very beginning. Like, I was like, because it's near and dear to me, because the setting is my hometown, Detroit. And I just did not want to be so blatant about we in Detroit. You know, I wanted people to be able to notice certain things that would lead you to that experience, because Detroit is such an iconic city. And, but I did struggle with, just because I know, I don't know if my readers know. And so after having this letter, I definitely, in my next revision, I went back and sort of anchored it clearly in time and place. And I'll prove it because my editor actually mentioned it in her 5-page free critique as we were discovering if we were going to work together. I got it right. Okay. So that was there. All good points that I definitely take. And I'm like, okay, I can go with this. I can grow with this. I can develop with this. So definitely wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so next, editor or not? Editor or not? Okay, editor, you want to dive deeper into your work, even more, push further, create the best work you can, no matter the feedback. That is at the very core of who you are right now as a writer in your experience. If that's at the core of who you are, you may be ready for an editor. That investment may be a good investment for you. That is really about diving deeper, growing, pushing further. If you are someone who is not even ready to show it to mama and daddy, or the stranger down the street, or the guy, you're not ready for that. You're not ready for an editor because you're not going to be able to handle the feedback. You're not going to be able to handle the feedback. To everything, there is a season. And I really believe stages and pages, there's a season to this process. And so I just feel like if you want to invest in an editor and you're ready to dive deep into really understanding who you are as a writer and understanding your work behind the eyes of someone not connected to you, and willing to take that feedback, you may be ready. You are not ready to invest in an editor if your book is finished. You're like, I'm done with this. I am done. I'm done. This is it. I'm not going on any further. I'm not changing any characters. I'm not moving to another scene. I'm not editing nothing. I'm not cutting nothing. I'm not revising nothing. I am finished. And you're not willing to do anything more to that work, you're not ready for an editor. Because the editor's whole goal is to push it forward, to say, this is what I see. This is what you need to change. This is problematic. This needs corrective. You said this here, but then you contradicted it here. This is not clear. Your book is finished. On to the next. Just don't invest in the editor. It's a waste of your money. You're not ready to invest in an editor. Alrighty, next paragraph. Let's see. Is this good? I'm at 22 minutes. 25, we might have to split it up again. Okay. This is something I totally disagree with, especially at knowing the industry. Hunger Games. Just keep that in mind. Bunch of kids killing kids. Okay. We also fear that the narrative might be overly dark and maybe even a little overly irreverent about death. Really? Really? Okay. I ain't gonna hate on nobody's book, but all I saw in Hunger Games was a bunch of kids killing kids. And this is America. I'm gonna leave it at that. Though we do think this is an incredible opportunity to really dive into the topics of aging and death for young adult readers, be sure that you treat the deaths of these elderly residents respectfully. Be sure also that the narrative isn't entirely dark. Instead, make sure to inject small but significant moments of lightness and joy so that the reader does not become overwhelmed by it. Small, significant moments of lightness and joy so that the reader does not become overwhelmed by it. I will tell you that paragraph right there almost made me feel like this person did not read a lot of YA. I had to pause a little bit, but now we're back. I think I left off on... Okay, so we were talking about the whole overly dark narrative of my book that was written in a letter. The sentence is, we also fear that the narrative might be overly dark and maybe even a little overly irreverent about death. And all I could think of is every book I read from the ages of probably 11 to 14 or 15, when you're in that moody blues stage of teenage development, and everything is like blah, and you could just wear black all day, and you're real emo. It's all dark. All of the books I ever read during that time was really dark. And actually, one of the comp titles for my Wisdom House Dance Club is Kira Kira. That was my oldest daughter's favorite book. And the whole book is about a young girl's journey with watching her sister die of cancer. That's that age. Kids from about 11, 12, especially girls, 11, 12, all the way until they get about 16, is all of those hormones make life pretty dark, and lots of issues and death, and unfortunately suicide. I had a young lady who was a friend of mine commit suicide in 8th grade, and I remember to this day how impactful that was. She was in 8th, I was in 6th, but it was just so impactful to me. And it's just a dark time for young people as they're developing and growing, and there's lots of adults, hopefully, that they find resources to come out of that. But yeah, it's a dark phase. And then after, like I said before, Hunger Games, when I saw that as a teacher with my 7th graders, I was just like appalled. It wasn't a field trip I planned, but it's a whole movie about young people killing young people. What? But okay, that was in there. So I did, when I went through my revisions, I kept that in mind. Am I being really dark? Am I not being reverential? Which writing is writing. I think you can choose how far you go or not with suggestions like that. But I did keep that in mind as I revised. So as an editor, you may be ready for an editor if you are ready for a coach, someone to hold you accountable, someone that can see beyond you straight to the heart and mind of your reader. Okay, they see beyond you to the heart and mind of your reader, and help the perspective turn away from you and towards your reader within your writing, within your manuscript, within your novel. If you are ready to do that with the editor, that editor is able to do that, then yes, you may be ready to invest in an editor. You are not ready to invest in an editor if your whole goal is to just check the box that you did what you did. Maybe money is no issue for you, that you have all kind of disposable income, and you're like, oh, I'm a part of this writers community, and I'm gonna get an editor, and I'm gonna have this editor review, because it sounds like the appropriate thing to do. It sounds like the poo-poo posh thing to do as someone who is an aspiring author. You're not ready. Don't get an editor. It's a waste of their time and your time, really. If that's still the stage you're in, don't get an editor. Yes, editors will take your money if you give it to them and not have a care in the world about what your intentions are or what your goals are. But we need people in this writing community, especially if you're writing for children, who are serious about growing, developing in their craft as much as possible. Okay, so editor, let's read another paragraph. We may have to read two because I'm running out of editor or not ideas. The story also seems to go in a lot of different directions, from the deaths to the dance club to Azarier's crush on Jason. Make sure that all of these different plot lines are working together to form one overarching narrative, being sure that each storyline is fully developed and fully integrated into your larger story. That was powerful for me. I kept that in mind the whole entire 3rd, 4th revision. I just kept saying, am I getting lost in some of these other paths, some of these other plot lines? Have I tied all the plot lines together? And I do that often in all of my storytelling, where I look at it as a big, huge sweater, and yet there's this string that if I pull that one string, one yarn, that it'll unravel the whole thing. But that one also keeps the sweater all together and beautiful. You've seen that happen before. So that's the visual I always have in my mind when I think of my stories, because they always have these subplots going on and these other experiences and narratives happen in the midst of the major plot line. Okay, so that was really powerful for me. So should you invest in an editor or not? You should invest in an editor, or you're probably ready to invest in an editor if you're willing to take a journey with patience. It takes patience. Like I said, you turn in your work, you're not going to hear from them for a while. It's not one of those every day, hey, where you at? They have to have time to read it 2 or 3 times, digest it, then go through, some of them may do a line edit, some of them may do a deep dive edit, They need that time, and you're not going to be a part of that period, that they're doing that. So you need to have patience, and if you're willing to have the patience, and for me, I'm not even thinking about that manuscript. I'm not querying. I'm not trying to develop a proposal, any of that, because I want to first get back the feedback from the editor to see where the next set of work is going to take me in the manuscript. What do I need to get down and begin to revise or rewrite again? So if you have patience and you are at a stage of patience with your work, you're definitely able to probably be ready for an editor. You are not ready for an editor if you're just looking for some connections. You want to get to know an editor so they can connect you to a publisher, so they can publish your book and get it out there. All of that flows through your mind. It's human nature. You're trying to reach a journey, reach a destination in your writing. All of that happens to all of us. But the reality of it is, if that's all you want from the experience of working with an editor, don't invest. It's probably not going to happen. And there's no need in you being mad and upset and angry because you thought you were sold something and didn't receive it, and getting a bad name in the industry because you put out some lies about what you thought you should have got and didn't receive. You're not ready for an editor. Don't waste your money or your time. Just continue to grow, continue to take your time, continue to query, go about it a different route. Okay. All right. We're almost at the end. We hope that this editorial critique proves to be helpful as you move forward. I especially felt it was helpful. I did feel like it was helpful. It did not cut like a knife. I felt like it was very helpful from the moment I began reading it. We so appreciate the wonderful work that Quele does, and we appreciate the opportunity to review your manuscript. Because of our concerns, we will not be offering representation at this time. I thought that was so funny because I didn't think it was for an offer of representation, but that's that whole idea of you get it out there into the hands of an editor, they're going to be like, oh, this is fabulous. Yes. Yeah, I just needed someone to get their eyes on it and sort of help me continue to shape it further. However, we believe that you are already well on your way to something exceptional here. Wisdom House Dance Club has so very much to offer. I love that. That's another one of those gonna blow up and put on my wall. In these first 10 pages, you have already built an incredible premise upon which your story might unfold. We believe that you must be careful that your narrative is not overwhelmed by darkness. This is just a restatement. That each plot line works together to shape a larger comprehensive narrative, and that attention is paid to the details both in the writing on a sentence level and also in regards to the plot. And if all of these things are attended to, Wisdom House Dance Club has the opportunity to be a powerful and groundbreaking. I love that. It might be total smoke, but I love it. Thank you again for allowing us to review your work, and we wish you all the very best in your writing endeavors. So this letter is what made me say, I'm ready for an editor. When I got this, I thought, if I grow just this much, oh my God. If I grow this much from reading this 1.5 page letter, it helps guide me that as much as it did, humongously, as much as it did, how much more if I invested in an actual editor, freelancer. And that's how I felt. And that is what made me say, onward! I'm finding an editor that I can work with because I want to continue to grow in this journey. So last ones. You are ready probably for an editor. If one, you can afford it. And I've given you a tip on how you can afford it in the other video, which is all of those little ways in which you pay yourself, your 1%, your little cappuccino treats, your little hookup, maybe your hair, maybe your nails. just say, instead of investing in those things, I'm going to save that money and invest it into the editor payment. Every editor is different, but most of my research shows they charge by the word. So think of how long your manuscript is, look at your word count, and say even if they charge 3 pennies, 3 cents per word, how much would it be? That would be a good understanding of how much it would cost to invest in an editor possibly. So if you can afford it, either by doing that or you just have that disposable income, you have the income to be able to invest, then yes, an editor, it should not be a hardship. You should not be paying household bills to pay for an editor. I do believe that the adage, and maybe it's an old folks adage, but I'm over 40 and refined, so I own it, that you got to spend money to make money. I just believe that. And so this is one way, if you want to become published where people are invested in your work and you're making money from it, this is one way that you're going to spend some money to make that money, and then get you an LLC so that you can write off a lot of it for your taxes. You could do that. That is a choice you have. But you are not ready for an editor if you don't value them enough to pay them. There are different levels of feedback, critique partners, your family, beta readers that you can tap into without having to pay them. A lot of online writing community boards will read your work. I've read several people's work on Twitter and different spaces just by exchanging our work. But if you are truly not valuing an editor to pay for them, and you're trying to hustle man them down in their price, and you can't see why they would charge that much, and that's crazy, you're not ready. You're not ready to have an editor, so don't worry about it. Just continue to grow in your processes and your steps. As an editor, there's so many different steps and processes and different levels that you don't have to worry about having a freelance editor. But for me, this letter, this fabulous letter, and all of that feedback was able to open up a whole new understanding of my work for me, get behind someone else that didn't love me eyes when they looked at my work. And I felt like if I could get all of what I got from this letter, how much more would I get from an editor who is professional in the industry and their process. So, editor or not, tell me if you think you are ready for a freelance editor. And if you are, why do you think you are? If you're not, why do you think you're not? And there's no shame in any of it. No shame in any of it. We're all about growing as part of a community of writers. So if you think you're ready, let me know what makes you ready. And if you're not, then tell me why you think you're not. And we'll have that conversation. Thank you so much for joining Pizzo's Perfection. Thank you for subscribing, for liking, and for sharing, and for commenting. I'm so glad that you decided to spend a little bit of your time hanging out with me, discovering whether you are ready for editor or not.